Sarah Halley. Please, could you present yourself and tell us something about you and about you and playback theater?
Okay. So I've been doing playback theater for 17 years, more than 17 years. I started in studying at the School of Playback Theater with the founders, Jonathan Fox and Joe Salas in New York. I've been involved in theater for social change and theater for community development. I really like the combination for playback theater. On one hand, it's a very creative artistic form. It involves movement and dance and music and storytelling, but it's also very much used for bringing groups together, for building community. I really love the place where you witness one another's story, and I've experienced working over the years with many kinds of groups using playback theater and experiencing a lot of really positive change for not just individuals, but really for even the sort of fabric of community that can happen over time. A little bit of my history: I've been teaching at the Center for Playback Theater for almost 12 years, I think, at this point. And I've done some international travel and teaching as well. So,
Something about the topic you told us about your relationship with the social part of playback theater, and in fact, here in Assisi, you did a workshop about playback theater and social awareness. So, could you please tell us something more about this topic and about your relationship with this topic, and why did you choose to take this topic here?
okay, great. So one of the things that drew me to playback theater is that there's really a core value in playback theater that says everyone's story is important and everyone's story deserves to be told and heard. So any teller can come, every story is important. It's a kind of deep democracy or inclusion in the value of playback. And my experience is that even though that's a value for playback theater, that it doesn't always happen. And sometimes people don't come to the teller's chair. Maybe they feel their story will be rejected. You know, like in today's workshop, we talked about different social identities that we have as people and how that impacts not just how we see the world, but how the world sees us. So if you're a member of a group that's typically discriminated against, like if you are gay or lesbian, or you're maybe Black American, or somebody who's maybe poor, you know, there's a lot of bias and prejudice anyway. So they may feel the fear of being rejected is too great, or they won't come. Or there's many reasons why, you know, people may not come to the teller's chair, even though we invite them. So for me, over the years, it's been really important to ask the question, what do we need to do as playback practitioners to really bring people into playback theater? So if we want to hear stories, just wanting to hear them and being willing to hear them isn't enough. We have to do a lot of our own work to understand how our own bias and prejudice and our own cultures and experience limits what we see and what we hear and in our tellers. So for me, there's a personal work that each playback practitioner has to do to be very aware of our own social aware identities. And we also need to be very aware of the people that we want to invite. So for example, if we're doing a project and we want to invite people who are maybe people who have fought in war, you know, veterans of war or something, then we need to know something about them. We need to know something about this group, what their experiences are, so that we can relate to them, so they feel that we can really understand them. You know, it's not just enough to say we're all human beings and we understand the human experience. You know, if we've never lived it, it's very hard to know. And if it's a community that's very different by culture or by experiences, we need to learn something. We need to learn something of the history and the context, the story that the story sits in. So that's work I feel very passionate about, and I feel playback has something really to offer the world in terms of building bridges between people. But but only if we can really understand ourselves enough to be able to be open to listen and to really understand the other.
I would like to ask you something more personal. I know when you lead a workshop, you always get out something personal from that workshop. Can you tell us something you are getting out from this workshop you lead today? Yes.
Well, let me see. So many people in the workshop today are newer to playback theater. So sometimes, like when I was teaching in Frankfurt, all the people had at least 4 years of experience, if not more, in playback theater. And in this group, there were many people who were new to playback theater. So for me, when you're new, you have kind of fresh eyes, you know. And for me, I don't assume that playback is always the right method to use. Sometimes playback isn't what we need. You know, I don't have this idea that playback is perfect and it's every situation playback is the best. But I know that it has a power, and so to hear people who are new expressing, you know, their interests and their questions, they help me think differently. Also, I live in the United States, and I do a lot of playback work in the United States, and sometimes I get to be in an international context. And being here today was a very diverse group, and I really value that. You know, it's challenging to work like personally, to be patient with the translation, you know, the differences in translation. It requires a kind of a level of patience. And for me, you know, when I started at the School of Playback Theater, there were a fair amount of Europeans that would come. But now we have all of these people from Asia coming. So for me today to see an acting team where we had people from Singapore and Taiwan and Hong Kong working together, you know, for me that's personally very satisfying. It says that some of the barriers that were up are now open, and more people are getting to do playback theater from different places. And so, you know, it's enriching to meet different people and hear their stories. And you know, it's very moving. It's very moving for me.
Thank you. One last question. We have to spend 3 more days together here in Assisi. I hope you have for these 3 days. Just one.
Well, I'm really looking forward to getting to participate in a workshop and be an actor. So because I do a lot of leading and conducting, I don't always get to be the actor or get to be the teller. So I certainly hope I can tell a story while I'm here, and I hope I can be an actor in a performance or in a workshop. So those are 2 things I'm looking forward to. Yeah, and you know, my experience is that we're just still coming together. You know, it's been the end of our first full day. So I look forward to where we are in 2 more days. I'll know more people by name, and I will have heard more stories, and we're a kind of smaller, more intimate group than you know, I mean, it's 100 people, but it's still somewhat intimate. So I'm looking forward to what happens and the feeling over the next couple of days being part of this community. So
Thank you very much.